In essence, the procedure today we'll have the lecture. We'll then have an intermission, during which time you can write out your questions, and then we'll bring the speaker back to answer your questions. Today we are very pleased to have with us Mr. Ron Miller from Portland, and the title of his lecture is Doomsday Calculations. I want you to welcome Ron to our section.
Technocracy put forward two very great ideas some 60 years ago. Human freedom is not guaranteed by any document or any form of government, but by the lack of a reason or a mechanism to restrict it. The second idea was that economic analysis should be based on physical principles and facts, not on commodity evaluation or money. I'd like to investigate the first of these ideas in some detail and the second in a lot greater detail. Democracy, in the commonly accepted usage of the term, means the right to elect those who govern the society. The question is just, what does this guarantee us? We have in this country 83,000 governmental units, 504,404 elected officials in this government. There is one elected official for every 182 people in this country. What kind of a government doesn't guarantee good government or freedom or justice or any of these other things that are talked about by quite a bit? Politicians are brought in by those, are simply bought by those with enough money. We've watched that happen a lot. I come from Oregon, and here a couple of weeks ago, they had a vote in the state government to pass a law restricting cigarette smoking in areas where young people frequent. It didn't pass. It also seemed that at the same time, some of the newspapers discovered that most of the people in the state legislatures get their money for their electoral campaigns from the cigarette lobbies. Now, of course, all these politicians said that had absolutely nothing whatever to do with my vote. What do you want to bet? This is an excerpt from one of the books I picked some of this material out of, from William Greider's, I think, Who Will Tell the People. Another familiar way of explaining the decline of politics focuses on the deterioration of elections and campaigns. The decline of electoral politics has been underway for at least a generation and is now so advanced that even political elites have become preoccupied with its implications. If the people no longer believe in elections, will they continue to believe in the power of the elected to govern their lives? Every season, new discussions are convened around the subject, searching for the mechanical reforms that might restore faith in elections. A veritable fortune in foundation grants have been spent trying to devise solutions, educating inert voters, or promoting old-style candidate debates, or discouraging negative campaign tactics. Despite these good intentions, the active electorate continues to shrink, and as we will discuss later at this point, the shrinkage is almost certain to continue well into the future. By focusing on the electoral process, these inquiries unconsciously define the meaning of citizenship in a rather narrow and passive terms. Citizens whose only role is to show up every couple of years and mark a ballot. Nevertheless, the steady decline in voting is the most visible evidence that something is wrong. Elections are the most direct link to governing power, the collective lever that is meant to make citizens sovereign and office holders accountable to them. So why don't people use it, especially when they're so unhappy with the government? Now, this is not technocracy talking at all. Since 1960, voting in presidential elections is down 20% and down 30% outside the South, where the newly enfranchised black citizens raise participation rates. Roughly half of adult America stays home, despite the hoopla and extraordinarily expensive campaigns for the presidency. Elected power in the representative branch rests on an even narrower less of the electorate. In typical off-year elections, important senators and representatives are returned to office on the votes of small minorities, often as little as 15 or 20% of their constituents. Nor are elections the satisfying public rituals they used to be, dramas that renew the popular faith in self-government. After the 1990 congressional contest, 3 in every 4 Americans said they were not very satisfied with the outcomes, even when their candidates won. This is not technocracy talking now. This is somebody else. Exactly what kind of government does this really guarantee us anyhow? All of this stuff. Well, again, here's a quote from a book highly recommended by Mr. Bill Clinton. In fact, his recommendation is on the cover of the book if you have to pick it up. It's called Reinventing Government. Homicide is the leading cause of death for black males between the ages of 15 and 34. Since 1986, gunshot wounds to children aged 16 and under have increased by 300% in major urban areas. Deaths from gunshot wounds have soared among black youths, while deaths from other forms of violence have remained level. I think you know something about that probably in the LA area. For every year, American industry produces more than 2 tons of hazardous waste for every man, woman, and child in the nation. Industry could cut this amount in half in 5 years, according to the Congressional Office of Technology Assessment. Yet the Environmental Protection Agency spends 99% of its budget managing pollution, not preventing it. The United States ranks 20th in the world in infant mortality, ahead only of Greece among the industrialized democracies. According to the National Commission to Prevent Infant Mortality, the average hospital cost for low birth weight babies is $500,000, at least 250 times the average cost of medical care during pregnancy. And furthermore, the kind people afterwards, when these people do survive, many of them are in poor shape and have to be cared for by the society all the rest of their lives. In 1991, the federal debt reached $3.6 trillion, $14,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. Every year we spend $200 billion in federal taxes simply to pay interest on the debt. This is exactly what technocracy predicted, 50 years ago? An exponential rise in debt. Exactly what happened. One study, done mostly, I think, here in California, of 68 local governments, found that the cost of services that the governments provide was 30% greater than the budget of the governments. These guys can't even run their own organizations. The same group found that only 4% of governments know the direct cost of each service they provide, only 2% know what the total cost of each service they provide, and only 10% know what services they provide. These are the city governments. Politicians are elected on the basis of image, not on the basis of whether they've done a good job or not. Political campaigns are seldom based on competence. In fact, almost never. If there's something a politician does not want brought up, it's competence. Technocracy has been chided for its lack of interest in democracy and its respect for competence. No politician in his right mind would even propose a criteria for the measurement of competence. Technocracy understands that the primary function of the political superstructure imposed on our society is mostly to protect those who have money from those who do not. Technocracy proposed that the society should be organized to operate the technology that provides us our standard of living for the benefit of all the citizens of the North American continent, no matter who they are. Virtually everyone in the country has some idea that something is drastically wrong with this system, but they're not sure exactly what it is or where it is. Every few years they switch horses, but the same things continue to happen. The level of degradation seems to increase. They all have the best of intentions. It's just that